Tham Luang Cave Rescue. On June 23, 2018, 12 boys from the Wild Boars soccer team and their coach entered the Tham Luang Cave system in northern Thailand. They planned a short trip after practice just to explore. Rain had been light that morning, and the sky looked clear. None of them knew that heavy monsoon storms were moving toward the region. Inside the cave, the tunnels twisted deep into the limestone mountain. The group walked for over 2 miles before stopping to rest. Then the water began to rise. Rain flooded the narrow passages behind them, cutting off the entrance. In minutes, their only exit was gone. They moved deeper, searching for higher ground, until they found a dry rock shelf above the floodwater. There they waited. No food, no light, and no way to contact the outside world. By the next morning, parents realized the boys hadn't returned. Local rescue teams entered the cave but were pushed back by fast-moving water and mud. The Thai Navy SEALs joined, but the current was too strong and visibility near zero. The operation soon drew international attention. Experienced cave divers from around the world began arriving, including British experts Rick Stanton and John Valanthan. Days passed with no sign of life. Pumps were installed to drain water, but the rain kept falling. The divers had to navigate flooded tunnels so tight they could barely turn their heads. Each dive took hours. Then, on July 2nd, 9 days after the boys disappeared, Stanton and Valanthan surfaced into an air chamber. Their lights revealed thin faces staring back. All 13 were alive. The relief was immediate, but the hardest part was still ahead. Getting the boys out through the flooded maze was nearly impossible. None of them could swim, and some tunnels were more than a kilometer long. A new plan was made. Each boy would be sedated, fitted with a full-face diving mask, and guided one by one through the passages by 2 divers each. It was a desperate idea, but the only one that could work. Over 3 days, the operation began. Rain threatened to flood the cave again, but the rescuers continued. One by one, the boys were carried underwater, through darkness and silence, along narrow rock corridors and small air pockets. More than 100 divers worked in shifts with pumps and lines running continuously. Each rescue took nearly 6 hours. The boys were sedated to prevent panic, their faces sealed in full masks as divers guided them through the flooded maze. The smallest child, just 11 years old, was so light that he kept floating upward, forcing rescuers to hold him down as they maneuvered through the tunnels. Another boy briefly lost his air connection, and a diver had to share oxygen until they reached the next chamber. Every movement was calculated, every breath counted. By July 10th, all 12 boys and their coach were rescued. Ambulances carried them to safety as exhausted divers watched in silence. One Thai Navy SEAL, Saman Kunan, lost his life delivering oxygen tanks, a reminder of the mission's danger. After 17 days in darkness, 13 souls emerged alive, carried by courage and hope. Jackson County Cave Diver Incident. On April 17, 2019, British cave diver Josh Bratchley entered a flooded cave system in Jackson County, Tennessee. The exploration was meant to be a routine mapping dive with a small team of experienced divers. Josh had been part of the British team that helped rescue the Thai boys from Tham Luang the previous year. He was calm, precise, and known for his quiet confidence underwater. That day, the group moved deeper into the narrow system, threading through tight passages and low ceilings filled with silt and cold water. At some point during the return, visibility dropped to almost nothing. A cloud of disturbed sediment turned the water into complete darkness. When the rest of the team surfaced at the entrance chamber, Josh was not behind them. They waited, calling his name through the echoing void, but there was no response. The realization set in slowly. Josh was still inside, somewhere beyond the submerged passages. After ensuring that all safety lines were intact, the team contacted authorities. Rescue divers were flown in from several states. The cave was known for its complexity, winding tunnels, sharp turns, and sudden vertical drops. Inside, temperatures were near freezing. Hours passed. No one knew if Josh had found an air pocket or if he was trapped underwater. What no one knew was that Josh had managed to locate a small air chamber deep within the system. He surfaced, took off his mask, and found a pocket of breathable air, just large enough to sit upright. It was pitch black. His breathing echoed off the rock walls. He turned off his lights to preserve the batteries and waited. There was no sound except water dripping from the ceiling. Above ground, rescuers prepared to re-enter the system. They had to follow the same guidelines that Josh had used earlier, crawling through flooded tunnels and silt clouds. Every move stirred more sediment, making visibility even worse. After more than 24 hours since he disappeared, the first rescue diver reached the air pocket. In the beam of his light, Josh appeared, calm, alert, and sitting on a small rock shelf. When asked if he was okay, he simply nodded and said, "Yes, just a little hungry." It took several more hours to bring him out safely. Once outside, Josh refused medical treatment, saying he was fine. He thanked his rescuers quietly and later told them he had focused on staying calm and breathing slowly. His training, he said, was the reason he survived. Josh Bratchley's survival became one of the rare stories in cave diving where skill, patience, and composure overcame every possible danger. In the depths of an underwater labyrinth, he waited alone in silence and walked out alive. Boesmansgat Cave Incident. On January 8, 2005, Australian cave diver David Shaw descended into Boesmansgat, a deep freshwater sinkhole in South Africa's northern Cape. The cave reached a depth of more than 280 meters. David had already explored it before, setting world records for extreme depth dives. But this time, he had a different mission: to recover the body of another diver, Dion Dreyer, who had died in the same cave 10 years earlier. Dion's body had been spotted by David during an earlier dive, lying at around 270 meters, still wearing his diving gear. David, an airline pilot by profession and a man known for his calm focus, decided he would bring Dion home to his family. It was one of the deepest recovery attempts ever made. David and his close friend, fellow diver Don Shirley, planned every detail. They prepared multiple gas mixtures, decompression stages, and a team on the surface to monitor time and depth. Each minute at that depth meant hours of decompression on the way back up. Communication would be minimal. Failure could be fatal. At 6:30 in the morning, David began his descent. The water grew darker with every meter. He carried lights, cameras, and a specially designed body bag. Don followed a part way before stopping at his own planned depth. David continued alone into total darkness, his light beam cutting through the still water. At the bottom, he reached Dion's body and began the recovery process. But the environment was unforgiving. The silt around the body rose instantly, turning visibility to zero. Equipment lines tangled. The immense pressure at that depth made even small movements exhausting. Within minutes, David's breathing rate increased. His buoyancy became unstable. Don, waiting above, realized something was wrong when David's light stopped moving. He tried to descend further, but his own equipment was malfunctioning from the extreme pressure. His helmet light flickered. His breathing became heavy. Disoriented, he began his ascent, fighting dizziness and confusion. He would later describe those moments as the closest he had ever come to death. David never made it back. His body was found days later, remarkably still attached to the line beside Dion's remains. During the recovery operation, rescuers discovered that his camera had continued recording. The footage showed David working methodically until his air supply dwindled and consciousness faded. Don Shirley survived, but only barely. He suffered severe decompression sickness, permanent inner ear damage, and temporary paralysis. Yet he lived, a survivor of one of the most dangerous cave diving operations in history. David Shaw's final dive became both a tragedy and a testament to human determination. He risked everything to bring another diver home. Don Shirley, the man who returned from the depths that day, carried the memory of his friend and the lesson that in the silent blackness of Boesmansgat, survival is measured by seconds and breath.